Ok, este es Ben Shapiro, es una persona conservadora, tiene pensamientos conservadores. Vamos a ver, va a platicar con Jordan Peterson. Peterson él habla tocante, también conservador. El hombre tiene que ser responsable por sí mismo, no puede andar quejándose. Él también está en contra de la tercera ronda de feminismo, segunda, tercera ronda de feminismo. Um, Él no es que esté en contra, él tiene datos tocante la igualdad de pago, donde todas las personas dicen es más a favor del hombre y no es. Él tiene datos. Entonces, eso habla de eso. Aquí van a platicar de los la onda ahorita del transgénero. Desafortunadamente, mucha gente uh, um, está promoviendo el transgénero en la manera de que, no promoviendo por decir que están activando pensamientos en personas que a lo mejor con el tiempo se les pudo haber disipado, controlado. Como la chavita esta Jazz. Desde niña, o sea, una niña no tiene, o sea, una niña primero no tiene consentimiento. Un niño, un menor, él no puede darte el consentimiento de hacer algo con un adulto. ¿Cómo le vas a dar a él la autoridad a un niño que te diga que no, es que no soy niño, soy niña, no soy niña, soy niño? Entonces, de esto van a platicar. Vamos a ver cómo va la plática esta.
I mean, it's funny because I think that, the issue that you started to become really politically prominent on, which is the Bill C-16 in Ontario and
Canada, it was federal law.
In Canada,
Jordan Peterson is Canadian.
That's the issue where now the question that's constantly being asked, so why do you even care? Why do you even pay attention? And the answer is because
I was asked that earlier today.
Oh, really? What did you say?
I'm not letting a cat have my tongue.
Yeah.
It's like it has nothing to do with gender as far as I'm concerned, or that's peripheral in some sense. So the accusation, why do you care? Fair enough. It's like, in some way, people can go to hell in a handbasket if they're inclined to. Now, I would rather have that not happen, but people are, what would you say, doomed to their own autonomy. But I'm not saying words that other people want me to say. And the idea of compelled speech, it's like, the bill was this much about gender, and it was this much about...
Aquí su pelea, o sea, más grande es que él está en contra donde el gobierno te tiene que decir cómo debes hablar. No le puede decir si un hombre nació hombre, pero el hombre ahora se identifica como mujer. El gobierno canadiense dice no, si le dices hombre y él se quiere identificar como mujer, tú estás siendo transfóbico o X y es hate speech. Son palabras dañantes que se puede hacer un crimen. Entonces ahí lo que él pelea es que el gobierno te está diciendo cómo hablar, qué tipo de palabras usar, y eso no se puede hacer. El government cannot compel speech. El gobierno no te puede decir qué decir o cómo hacer o cómo actuar.
Oh yeah, the government's going to tell me what to say. Hey, but now they're regulating with therapists.
This is interesting because to me, the problem with a lot of this is less a free speech issue, even though I'm on the same page with you. And to me, it really is a fundamental
Y
truth.
es anti-libertad de expresión. Que el gobierno te diga qué decir, qué hacer, cómo hablar, cómo dirigirte a una persona.
Meaning that, yeah, you're trying to force me to say something I don't want to say, but to me, the fact that what you're trying to force me to say is so innately opposed to the good is the problem. Like you could try, I would have objections to you forcing me to say that I like a particular movie, right? It may not be true, I don't like a particular movie, it would be bad to try to force me to say that, but the level of passion that I have for issues like this one really go to the fact that I think fundamental good of humanity relies on basic acknowledgments of biological truth, especially when it comes to gender.
Aquí, lo que esto se basa en es la ciencia que siempre estuvo. Hay dos géneros, hombre y mujer, no hay en medio. Sí hay las personas que nacen con los ambos sexos, hombre y mujer, pero es un 1%, 1 o 2% de toda la población. O sea, no podemos gobernar teniendo en mente que queremos gobernar como es el 1%. Como dice él, normalmente vas a la escuela y te enseñan que tienes 10 dedos en la mano, ¿verdad? Hay personas que nacen con cuatro, o sea, nomás con una mano y la otra sin dedos, sí. Hay personas que nacen con 11, con uno extra, sí, pero no te enseñan en el estudio que las personas nacen con 11. O sea, en grandes masas las personas nacen con 10 dedos en la mano, 10 dedos en los pies. Los bebés nacen con un género, hombre o hembra. Sí hay mixtos donde nacen con los dos, pero es tan chiquita el porcentaje que no hacemos leyes tomando eso en base. Toma en base la masa.
And anybody who's ever dealt with children, I find myself getting, if I look at my political evolution, I said that when I grew up in a religious home, so that means that pretty conservative. And then you go to college and you're living by yourself and you're not married, you don't have kids, you tend to become a little bit more libertarian, which is like, okay, let everybody do whatever they're going to do and it's not going to bother me. And then you have kids and you realize that there's a pool in which we are all swimming. And that pool is going to define...
Virginia.
Exactly.
Él dice, al principio estaba soltero, no tenía hijos, entonces le importa, es que hagan lo que ellos quieran, no se preocupen, pero ahora que ya tiene hijos, Ben Shapiro dice, oye, ahora me tengo que preocupar, ¿por qué? Porque ahora mis hijos van a estar involucrados en esta sociedad ahorita que están en cambio, donde quieren decirte qué decir, cómo hacer, y quieren que está bien decir que un hombre es una mujer y que una mujer es un hombre, nomás porque eso se considera un transgénero. Es lo que está diciendo él.
Exactly. Like my kid, it's going to determine how my kid lives. And I want my community to reflect some of my values because I don't want my kid to live in the toxic sludge that you are.
Y lo que dice él, quiero que mi comunidad refleje algunos de mis valores, los más importantes.
Yeah, well, indoctrinating my kids in bullshit. Yes, exactly. People will say, well, I'll exceed, but not for my children. Yeah. And that's what Virginia demonstrated. It's like, you can come after me, but you come after my kids, and that's a whole different story.
It's so fundamentally opposed to everything true. The fact that, and that's the insistence. The insistence isn't that people be treated humanely or be treated decently. The insistence is that...
Y aquí él trajo el caso de Virginia, donde por primera vez en mucho tiempo se hizo un gobernador republicano. Porque lo que pasó ahí es en una escuela de Virginia, una niña entró a un baño de niñas, ¿verdad? Un niño vestido de niña, o sea, mucha gente le estaba diciendo transgénero, se metió y violó a la niña, ¿verdad? La viola, el papá de la niña lo reporta, la escuela le dice, ¿sabes qué? No hagas ruido, deja que nosotros internamente hagamos la investigación y perfecto. Y pues él dijo, ok, les creo a ellos, desafortunadamente dijo eso, no reportó a la policía. No hace nada, pasa el tiempo, ¡pum! El niño lo hace otra vez. Este niño se viste de niña, se mete otra vez a otro baño y abusa de otra niña, ¿verdad? Entonces el papá, oye, no mames, ya se le hizo a mi niña, te di la oportunidad, o sea, ahí también fue fallo del papá, dándole la oportunidad que la escuela controlara internamente esa investigación. Entonces el papá va a la escuela a reclamarles y le dice, no, tú estás loco, papá, tú estás loco, viejo loco, aquí no hay un caso de que un niño vestido de niña haya violado a una niña. Es en the Board of Trustees, o sea, donde vas cada mes a platicar con los que están encargados de las escuelas. Y se hace un rollo y luego se dan cuenta, o sea, realmente que sí pasó eso que el distrito permitió que esto pasara 2 veces y no hubo nada. Al principio estaban diciendo que el señor estaba haciendo mentiras, que el papá de la niña estaba haciendo mentiras. La segunda parte, les mandaron una carta el departamento de escuelas y departamento de maestros, supuestamente que ahora los papás somos terroristas, que los papás por ir a intimidar a la mesa directiva de la escuela somos terroristas por ir a preguntarle qué está pasando con mi hijo. Y se hizo un rollo, se armó, se fue hasta el Attorney General de Estados Unidos y él tuvo que retractarse de decir, no, sí investigamos, realmente no investigó ni madres. La razón por qué sí tomó en consideración esa carta, porque la carta venía de la escuela de los maestros. No hubo investigación. Dice, no, pues yo sí investigué. ¿Cómo investigaste? Pues lo escuché en los periódicos. Y le pregunta, estaba en el Senado, ¿qué? ¿Cómo te vas a basar tu investigación en lo que dicen los periódicos? O sea, ¿qué tipo de ética tienes de no investigar nada y solamente creer lo que está publicado? Eso es el caso donde dice, y ahí eso dice, te puedes meter conmigo, soy soltero, como digamos, chavo, estaba soltero, te puedes meter conmigo, no hay problema, pero cuando entran mis hijos, no, ahí se para, the buck stops here, aquí, ya, te pasaste, ya con mis hijos no te metas, y ahí los padres se enojaron, ¿verdad? Porque todo esto salió a flote. Entonces en Virginia perdió el demócrata y ganó el republicano.
That your vision of yourself be reflected by me in defiance of baseline reality and in order to redefine how society as a whole.
Well, a lot of it's murky thinking. If someone asked me, do I believe that there are gender fluid people? I would say yes. And I would say a young man who's gender fluid, I know what he's like temperamental. He's high in agreeableness. He's high in neuroticism. So he has a feminine temperament. He's more interested in people than things. And he's extremely high in openness. And so his temperament is fluid. He's creative. And so he's one thing one day and one thing the next. And his fundamental temperament is towards the feminine. But that doesn't mean he's not a man.
Right, exactly.
So that's murky thinking. So that's exactly right. It's certainly the case that 1 out of 10 women, it depends on where you put the cutoff, but you could say with reasonable certainty that 1 in 10 women has a masculine temperament. 1 in 10 men has a feminine
Y aquí
temperament.
lo que está
And
diciendo
so
él,
that's a
o
lot
sea,
of people.
él
And
no
those
está
people,
en
especially if they're also
contra,
creative, well, they're kind
dice,
of at a
yo no
loss
estoy en
in
contra
relationship to what
de, que no voto en contra que hay unas fusiones de géneros, ¿verdad? Y lo que dice él, hay hombres que son más afeminados y hay mujeres que están más masculinas que una mujer básica, ¿verdad? Entonces, y es verdad, pero no significa que ese hombre femenino es una mujer. Eso más significa que es un hombre femenino y es una mujer femenina.
do with their identity, because they're pulled. First of all, they have a hard time catalyzing their identity. Creative people have a hard time catalyzing it. It's like the definition of creativity. They're protean. And so there have been people who play at the edges of gender identity forever. And fair enough. And sometimes that's even admirable if it's done in a sophisticated way. And it's charismatic. So you see it in Mick Jagger, you see it in David Bowie, you see it in people like Madonna as well. Madonna had
Mick
hard
Jagger,
edge.
Madonna,
All the Marvel
madre.
superhero women have a hard masculine edge. And so we find that charismatic because those people are also integrated. But the notion that there's such a thing as gender, that's not right. There's variability, personality, and temperament. And the idea that there's no such thing as biological sex, that's just insane.
It's insanity. They've
Y aquí, o sea, ahora la idea loca que no hay sexo biológico. Que no hay que la vagina no es vagina y que el pene no es pene.
gender from sex and then red gender back into
Yeah.
sex is more important than sex.
Well, and then why insist upon the biological modifications?
Right.
If there's no such thing as sex, it's like, well, then just act out your role.
Right.
Leave your body alone because it's irrelevant anyways. Well, it turns out it's not irrelevant. You have to go through the surgical transformation, which is a pretty dramatic answer to a question that for 99% of people who are ambivalent about their gender identity would be best solved without surgical intervention.
Yeah.
And then so now in Canada, because they banned conversion therapy, it's now all affirmation therapy.
Right, there's
no such thing as affirmation therapy.
Right, no, it's insane. I mean, the semantic game that was used in order to say, well, conversion therapy, which was at one time using electric shock to treat homosexuals, and saying that that's the same thing as you have a gender-confused 12-year-old.
Look, I had a 14-year-old kid who was a client of mine, and he was in the mid stages of puberty. He was a pretty creative kid, agreeable kid as well, right? And that's important. So he had a bit of a feminine temperament. That also meant he could be pushed around fairly easily. Well, there was an aggressively gay guy in his school was hitting on him and trying to convince him that he was gay. Well, he didn't know. So he wanted to talk to me about it. It's like, well, I was going to tell him. What the hell do I know about this kid? And I wanted to hear what his problems were and how it might be sorted out, what he wanted. And like that's what you do in therapy is you help people sort out their problems. Now this idea is you come to me with an axiomatic claim, whatever it is about your identity, and my job is to rubber stamp it. It's like, I'm not a therapist then. So this is not only insane, this insistence. Like I like to think of truth, untruth, and anti-truth, right? And the notion that therapists affirm is an anti-truth. Because, look, let's say you come to me and you say, you have a proposition about yourself, and I say, no, I'm your therapist. No, that's wrong. It's like, that's not good therapy. But neither is you have a proposition about yourself, you're disturbed enough to come to a therapeutic session, and I say,
Aquí
yes,
vamos
you're
a estar
right.
platicando
And if you're so right,
que ahora
why are you here?
los psicólogos
Like, what
están
I'm talking
tratando
about
el psicólogo es para escucharte, no para decirte qué es lo que eres. Es lo que dice él, es lo que está diciendo él. Ahora los psicólogos te quieren afirmar, no, sí, es que me platicas esto, sí, eres transexual, sí, eres esto. No, el psicólogo es nomás para escucharte, es lo que está diciendo él, no para decirte qué eres o no qué eres. Es para más o menos guiarte, que tú tomes la decisión, pero que el psicólogo no te diga qué eres o qué hacer.
School of psychotherapy is predicated on the idea that free expression of thought or the free transmutation of behavior is curative. And it's true with cognitive behavioral therapy, just like psychoanalytic therapy. It's all the same thing. And also the other axiom of therapy is voluntarily expose yourself in measured doses to what you're afraid of. And so that's an interesting thing because the psychoanalysts believed when the behaviors first came up with exposure therapy, they had it formulated wrong. They thought you learn to be afraid. So you're normal, and then something hurts you, and then you learn to be afraid. That's wrong. You're always afraid, except when you learn not to. So they had exactly backwards neuropharmacologically, and it really matters. This matters. That doesn't mean you can't learn some fears. You can, but mostly you unlearn terror. Right? So children are afraid to get away from their mother. It's because they're afraid of the entire world. Well, you have to learn how not to be. And you don't learn that by habituation, because that was the idea. So you take someone who's afraid, they've been conditioned to be afraid. You expose them to what they're afraid of, and then you have them do relaxation exercises, so they counter condition. Well, then it was discovered, and they don't have to do the relaxation exercises. It's like, oh, well, it still works, just exposure. It's like, well, they get less afraid when you expose because their fear habituates. So then the psychoanalyst said, well, if they get less afraid of that particular thing, the symptoms are just going to substitute because that fear of an elevator thing was reflective of the deeper fear of death. I had a client I exposed to an elevator, the doors open, she said, that's it too. And her fantasy about the elevator was, it was a place she was going to die in, of a heart attack. Well, people were discomforted and, what would you say, made contemptuous of her foolishness while she was suffering and dying. So social alienation and death, that was the elevator for her. So we exposed her to the elevator. What did she learn? Not to be afraid of the elevator. No. She learned she can tolerate those fears. She learns to be brave. And so the psychoanalysts they were diametrically wrong because if you expose someone to anything they're afraid of, effectively they get less afraid of everything. But it's that part why psychotherapy is curative in that manner, is that people discover that they're bigger than their fears. They don't discover that their fears are trivial.
I think that the cult of authenticity is going to be the destruction of all psychotherapy then. Because if the cult of authenticity is that your true authentic feelings are what makes you you, then the attempt to make you brave in spite of your fears is a suppression of your fears. It's almost like a Freudian analysis of you're suppressing your sexual desire, and this is not full authenticity.
Yeah, right. Why isn't the fear you?
Right, exactly.
The authentic you.
Exactly, and I think that's kind of where we're going. It seems like that.
Yeah, well, so this movement towards unity.
Estamos platicando que empezamos teniendo miedo a todo, teniendo miedo a esto, pero poco a poco empezamos a enfrentar las cosas y el miedo no se quita, el miedo nada más es algo que ya puedes soportar, algo que puedes, ¿sabes qué? El ejemplo que dice él, que tienes miedo al elevador, no se te quita el miedo al elevador, más que te haces un poquito más fuerte y ya puedes soportar el miedo ese y lo controlas y como que ya te metes al elevador, como el miedo a volar. No se te quita el miedo, te sigue dando miedo, pero entras y empiezas a platicarte, sabes que no, este avión está bien, es seguro, te terapeas y funciona. Es lo que están platicando ellos.
That we were talking about. This is a place I think where like informed liberals and conservatives could meet. It's like, well, there is this authenticity, let's say, in Drive for Adventure, and you see that elevated to the highest place in some sense in more careless Disney movies. But the full manifestation of that in an integrated sense is the drive towards authenticity inside this higher order unity. It has to be, because otherwise it's disuniting, it causes fragmentation and chaos. And so it has to be subordinate to a higher order end. And then you might say, well, what is that? Part of that's the reciprocal altruism that the evolutionary biologists are always on about. It's like, some for you, some for me, some for you, some for me, in measure, right? And that makes both of us richer. And so that's part of the higher order unity, and people are intensely reciprocally altruistic.
That's right. Screw it. I can read.
Okay. And so it's authenticity in the service of what? Now, when Pinocchio becomes real, he's already rescued his father, right? So he's established an accord with the tradition that gave birth to him already. He's revitalized that. So when he wakes up, he's not free. He doesn't have any strings on him anymore, but he's already existing in a harmonious relationship with his father. It's a big deal. And one of the lovely things about what happens to me as a consequence of my lectures is that lots of fathers and sons come up to me and say, we've really worked out our relationship. It's like, and they're both like, you've never seen smiles like that. It's really something to be stopped on the street and to be told that. To see people so joyful about that, because it's their heart desire, you know? And that's that integration of that drive to autonomy with...
Se pone sentimental porque él sabe que al él platicar, o sea, aunque mucha gente no lo quiere, ¿verdad? Al él platicar tocante sus pensamientos y cómo él ve la vida, tiene un libro que se llama 12 Reasons for Life, I think se llama, 12 Lessons for Life, 12 Reasons for Life. Se siente, o sea, se emociona porque la gente viene y le platica, oye, te conozco y muchas gracias por las pláticas que has hecho, me has cambiado la vida X. Entonces, esa es su gratificación cuando él va caminando y la gente lo para, le dice, oye, Jordan Peterson, muchas gracias por cómo platicas, me encantó tu libro y X. O sea, eso es lo que a él lo llena y le da el impulso al seguir, aunque todos, desafortunadamente, muchas partes de Canadá y Estados Unidos no le gusta cómo él platica.
Well, with the family, with the father, with the mother, the broader community, all that has to be in a higher unity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the conservative insistence, right?
Exactly. There are these, as you said before, the walls have to exist. You can have autonomy, but the autonomy has to exist within the walls. And then once you let the autonomy or the rationalism destroy all the walls...
Well, there's no autonomy without the walls. There's just chaos.
Bueno, es todo. Básicamente, ahorita la mentalidad es que si tú solamente piensas que eres que si yo no soy hombre y yo pienso que soy mujer, automáticamente la sociedad me tiene que aceptar así como soy. Ahora soy mujer, me puedo vestir de mujer y o sea, te exijo que tú te refieras a mí como mujer. O sea, y así no es. O sea, la forma de pensar de él y ellos es, si tú quieres vestirte de mujer, perfecto, vestirte de mujer, pero vestirte de mujer, pintarte las uñas, que te llamen mujer, que te llamen XX, no te quita ser hombre. Entonces, y cuando tú quieres que yo piense que solamente al vestirte de mujer, pensar que eres mujer, ya tengo que yo pensar que ya eres mujer, se te borró que naciste hombre. O sea, no. O sea, yo no voy a darle la espalda a la ciencia, a la biología, que naciste hombre. Entonces, básicamente es lo que están hablando. Bueno, otro videito, cualquier cosa, echarle gracias.